Hi, welcome to How Congress Uses AI, and you can too, a special training for journalists from POPVOX Foundation. I'm Gabriela Schneider. I'm Senior Communications Advisor at POPVOX Foundation, and I'm joined by my colleague.
Hello, my name is Aubrey Wilson. I'm Director of Government Innovation at POPVOX Foundation.
And we are a nonpartisan nonprofit of former congressional staffers, except for me, from both sides of the aisle with a mission of helping democratic institutions keep pace with a rapidly changing world.
With the emergence of generative artificial intelligence, or Gen AI, POPVOX Foundation was actually one of the very first organizations to convene congressional staff and provide resources and training for people on the Hill, as well as publish an overview of how parliaments around the world are adopting this emerging technology. Along with our executive director, Marcy Harris, I lead our work on AI and outreach to the Hill. So if you ever need a resource on Congress, how they're using AI, how they should be thinking about it, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm also a prior congressional staffer, as Gab mentioned. I used to be a legislative assistant and worked on some committees for a while. So I know firsthand what it's really like juggling the responsibilities of being a congressional staffer and aiding a boss, in addition to trying to adopt a new technology into that workflow.
So here's a quick overview of what we'll cover today, a quick history of legislative branch AI adoption, use cases of how Congress uses AI, and then 3, how you can use AI to cover Congress. And instead of diving right into how you can use AI to cover Congress, we thought it was important to fill you in on the background of how Congress has responded to the emergence of AI on a practical level. We thought that, by knowing more about how it has introduced AI into its workforce, we hope to give you a helpful perspective. It can help you with your reporting, because knowing how the institution understands and uses AI will inform the questions you ask, will inform your thinking about how Congress handles tech policy, and it could also help you find angles for when you're pitching stories to your editor. I'm going to kick it over to Aubrey. Thank you, Aubrey, to give you a brief background on how Congress has adapted to technology and the broader implications for how it does its job overseeing tech.
All right, so let's dive into this. So we at POPVOX Foundation really view this issue through the lens of a concept that we call the pacing problem. And it was a term first coined by Arizona State University law professor Gary Marchant to describe what he describes as the growing gap between the pace of science and tech and the lagging responsiveness of legal and ethical oversight that society relies upon to govern emerging technologies. This phenomenon is accelerating with the integration of AI in the workforce, and here's why it's important for your beat. Simply put, Congress has to keep up. As society and industries continue to evolve and adapt to new technologies, government is at risk of falling irreparably behind the innovation curve, which we know that common trope, right? That Congress is always behind. But this isn't just lagging about the use of the new tools. It's about government actually becoming unable to adequately understand the technology and therefore unable to adequately regulate them. Our goal is to close that gap so that democratic institutions can keep pace with a rapidly changing world. We want Congress to essentially stay with the times and maybe even, if possible, be ahead of the curve. As former Representative Kathy McMorris Rodgers said, and this is one of my favorite quotes of all time, Congress is a 19th century institution, often using 20th century technology to respond to 21st century problems. In legislatures around the world, elected officials are supported by limited staff, and yet the legislative demands on them have been massively increasing. They just simply can't keep up, and in many cases are falling behind, whether this is transcribing their session minutes, publishing bills online, or digitizing official records. The emergence of generative AI tools, such as LLMs, has the potential to close that capacity gap in a way that we've never seen before, and it greatly increases parliamentary efficiencies as well as policymakers' access and ability to digest critical information to be more effective lawmakers in the lawmaking process. However, the use of these tools is coming with a lot of trepidation, which is completely, understandable.
Totally
And so,
understandable.
right, but at the same time, there's such a hunger out there to really understand the responsible side of using these tools, because the gains can be so substantial, but it really does need to come with some adequate training and some upskilling of the workforce.
Yeah, thanks, Aubrey. And that's what we do at POPVOX Foundation. We help them with that. Come on, take the leap. You can do it.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, so that's the quick version of our big picture overview. And like I said, it's the quick version. If you go to popvox.org, you can read more about, there's 3 different pacing problems that Congress faces. And of course, we're always happy to talk about this in more detail one-on-one. So let's move on now to a brief history of AI adoption by Congress. It actually started, you might be surprised, it actually started back in the 1980s when the legislative support agencies like CBO started using predictive modeling, and then GAO started experimenting with machine learning and natural language processing, or ML and NLP for those of you in the know. Jump ahead to 2017 when the House started to create a legislative drafting platform using natural language processing, and we're actually going to get more into detail on that later. Then with the advent of Gen AI, we saw separate approaches by the 2 chambers to approve commercial tools like ChatGPT by ledge staffers. So when we published our report, Representative Bodies in the AI Era, which compared use of AI in legislatures all around the world with the US Congress, we did that back in January of 2024. The US House of Representatives was actually on the leading edge of Gen AI adoption. And it has since kept pace, albeit in a little bit more of a measured way.
Yeah, that's right, Gab. Okay, so picking up there, things really began to pick up speed in 2023. In the House, we saw the creation of an in-house tech innovation hub called the House Digital Service, which is under the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer. The launch of HDS was a game changer for the House in particular, and you can learn a lot about the innovation that they've led if you go to popvox.org/futureproofing. But in a nutshell, and specifically related to this conversation, HDS started an internal working group on AI. They provided 40 ChatGPT licenses to a bipartisan group of staffers to create use case examples to really understand how AI could be used for a congressional staffer in their workflow. This was a huge deal. It was really the House fostering innovation internally and letting staff be part of that experimenting process with the new tech to know where the lines should be drawn and really get a feel for where staff would be comfortable and where it would be appropriate to use these tools as a customer of CAO putting out these guidelines. Then starting in June 2023, the CAO's House Information Resources, or HIR, which is the big tech department in the House, started to issue House-wide guidance on authorizing use of generative AI on House-issued devices. Fast forward to September of 2024, and the CAO released the House's first AI policy via eDear Colleague. While this internal track of institutional investment was going on, members also began to keep watch on how AI adoption was being approached throughout the rest of the legislative branch. From September of 23 through 2024, the Committee on House Administration, where I actually used to work, issued a number of flash reports that really cataloged the AI strategies being adopted across the legislative branch entities. And we've actually archived those reports at popvox.org/AI. So you can keep pace of updated on them there, but they're also continue to be on House Admin's website, at least at the time being. This Congress, AI guidance was also included in the House Rules package, which we were very excited to see, and that was in January of 2025. And it instructed House officials to, quote unquote, continue efforts to integrate artificial intelligence technologies into operations and functions of the House. We have some guidance of our own on how.
Sorry, I just have to say, it was amazing.
It was
They
very
actually put it into House Rules.
House Rules is institutionalized, it's there. It was a really amazing way of seeing that the institution has recognized that AI is here to stay and that there needs to be continued effort and that it's a priority to the members to see it for the institution. So it was a huge big deal and it's very exciting. And we would hope to see something similar in the Senate. And so we're keeping our eye out for that. And on that note, we actually, as I was saying, we have some internal guidance of our own that we've actually published on how the House could continue its progress, which you can find out on our blog, which is popvox.org/blog/House Rules AI Focus. But briefly, the new rules have a little bit more of a restrictive framework than before, which have forced members of staff to proactively seek approval for new uses or tools by the CAO or by House Admin. And Gab, I'll pass it back.
Thanks, Aubrey. Thanks, appreciate it. So real quick, the main differences between what AI tools can be used in the House versus the Senate are, in the House, there was early guidance authorizing the use of ChatGPT. They used a methodical approach that basically said, we encourage you to responsibly use this new tech with some guardrails. Use AI wisely on non-sensitive data with privacy settings turned on. Don't just take its word for it. make sure there's a human checking the responses and providing oversight. And then with the rules changes that Aubrey just mentioned, they started to walk this approach back. Meanwhile, in the Senate, there's been more of a permissive approach with several commercial tools approved for use in the chamber. I know the Senate's being more permissive and, open to more. They got started later than the House, but in December of 2023, the Senate Sergeant at Arms authorized multiple AI platforms. ChatGPT, Microsoft's Bing Chat AI, which is now known as Copilot, and Google's Bard, which is now known as Gemini. And the Senate guidance focused on experimentation and learning. It obviously needs some updating, if nothing else, because the platforms have changed.
Yeah, that's right, Gab. Okay, so now that we've kind of gone over what commercially available LLMs are approved for use in the two chambers, we wanted to really go back and actually touch on something that Gab mentioned earlier, which is to give an example of an internally developed tool that's actually utilizing some AI. And so back in 2017, the House was an early adopter of natural language processing in a tool called the Comparative Print Suite, which we actually have here on the slide as a demo of showing you what it looks like. It's only available internally to House staff. And so this is a really cool opportunity for you to get a kind of an insider view as to how the tool works. Think of it as a track changes to compare how a proposed amendment would change a bill or how new legislation would impact existing laws, essentially a redlining tool to help staffers really understand what the implementation of a law would look like in the existing legal code and to really help them interact with Ledge Counsel better. We go into more detail on this tool in our Future Proofing Congress report, which is online at popvox.org/futureproofing. Okay, so other really cool innovations that are happening across the legislative branch that also utilize AI. So these are some of the noteworthy uses of AI by the Government Accountability Office, or GAO, that make their work more effective and efficient. And then also one of our favorite examples that we like to highlight is that on the House floor, Representative Jennifer Wexton, who's Democrat from Virginia, made history in July of 2024 when she actually became the first lawmaker to use an AI-generated model of her own voice to speak for her as she delivered official remarks. I highly recommend that if you haven't had the opportunity already to view this video, to go online and find it. It's an incredible use case of a tool that really shows how it can just really empower people in a way never really imagined before. And so it's just it really demonstrates how an official ban that would block this technology, wholesale, is just really not the right approach. There's some really incredible use cases that could really increase representation and really help empower representatives, especially as they undergo, issues in their personal life, particularly from a health standpoint. So highly recommend looking at this video. It's very moving.
It's very
I'll pass
moving.
back to you.
Totally. It's very moving. And what's really cool is that they had recordings of Representative Wexton's voice, so the AI generated voice sounds like her own voice.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like some electronic music, vocoder, right? Doesn't sound like Craffer. Anyway, okay, so now you have that important background knowledge. Let's dive into some use cases of how Gen I can help Congress increase its capacity, increase its ability to get its job done. We all know that it's very stretched thin. It doesn't invest in its workforce. They've been, the details. So because have to do a lot, maximizing the impact of a little, AI can help. It can help summarize a phone call. It can help with writing the first draft of constituent outreach. It can help draft a one-pager about a bill. It can help come up with names for the bill. You know how we love our acronyms in Washington. It can even help with some comms-related activities. I love like first drafts of press releases, social media content, talking points, speeches, all that kind of thing. Can be super, super helpful and can free the staffers' time to do more things, like maybe even meet with constituents, IRL.
Yeah. And these are really like just a start. Beyond kind of these like more low-hanging fruit, I guess, uses of AI in congressional staffers' workflow, there are even more nuanced use cases that we've seen congressional staffers starting to benefit from by using this technology. This includes a lot of administrative work that maybe you don't think of right away, including a lot of prep for hearings, like a lot of kind of the grunt work that has to take place that is usually assigned to interns. It's something that can massively make that AI can massively make that prep process so much more efficient and so much less time consuming and a lot more attention to detail. It's able to be spent where it's needed by staffers versus on some of just the grunt work. It's been extremely helpful for helping staffers start to research different policy models, to actually drafting out legislation. And even if it's not the best use case to draft official legalese in bill like form, it's really helpful with helping staff like in the ideation process of coming up with the policy memo that they can then really flesh out the details of and prepare to send to Leg Council, who then can write the proper legalese for a legislative text. And then the last like really amazing use case that we've kind of started seeing is just the opportunity to engage in real-time oversight by using AI. There's so much data from the executive branch that sometimes gets dumped on a congressional committee's doorstep, and to have staff have to parse through all of that is immensely time consuming and is often something that just doesn't have that congressional staff just don't have the capacity to do to perform that kind of almost in the moment oversight by actually understanding the data that's given to them. And that's something that AI has the ability to drastically help with. And that's a pretty incredible empowerment of Congress to be able to keep up with the executive branch in the modern era.
Totally, Aubrey. All right. So now you get your
Should be
diplomas.
jealous
You've
of
learned,
congressional staffers of all the ways that they can use it. So here's how you can
right?
use
Right.
it.
Exactly. Ask them, how are you using it? You have all the background on how Congress is using AI, but how would you use it on your beat? And to be honest, part of the reason that we created this training is talking to reporters and hearing, asking like, well, how do you use it? And hearing like, some outlets you're not allowed to, so would love to talk more about that. Some places maybe you feel like it's not going to be authentically yours, or you only use it for personal use, but you haven't used it for work. We're here to say like, you can do it, and here's some easy ways that will really help free you up, because we know you manage so much, have to juggle so much, always on deadline. So it will also help you understand how Congress stacks up. You'll learn more what questions to ask about congressional use as you become more familiar with the tools and their evolution. You'll gain insight on how Congress might legislate. And like I said, to start, it will help you increase your capacity, just like it's helping staffers increase theirs. So here's a quick overview of some currently widely available models. You probably are all familiar with this, but you've got OpenAI with ChatGPT, you have Anthropic with Claude, Google's got Gemini, and Meta's got Llama. I personally use Claude to help me with first drafts. It's really helpful with, give me 10 different subject lines for this pitch email, or I hate that I bother reporters with long pitches. Can you make this like 150 words? Like, there's a challenge. Make something very nuanced and policy oriented, 150 words, and it'll do it. And sometimes hallucinate, so I have to fix it. And here's some tips for how to use AI on your job. Treat the LLM like it's an eager intern. Aubrey, I think I got that quote from you, the eager intern. It can draft, it can summarize, it can provide ideas, but the LLM doesn't inherently verify accuracy. So it will, especially if you haven't used it before, if it's new, you'll notice that it sounds very confident in the answers and analysis it provides, but you always need to double check the outputs, especially for anything that's public facing. You should provide source documents. Don't just rely on the body of knowledge that the LLM already has. You can upload relevant documents, reports, data that you want it to process. You can set the tone and length. So be explicit about how you want the writing to sound. Like, should it be formal? Should it be conversational? You can even upload examples of what you've written, say, make it sound more like me in these, like I wrote these articles. You can say the length of the response, for instance, write me a 200-word summary in a neutral tone. And yeah, and definitely always be cautious with sensitive information. Don't feed the algorithm something it shouldn't know. I think that's the shortcut for that. Yeah, I don't need you can see what's rest on this on that slide. I'll let it go back to you, Aubrey.
Perfect. I'll add to your list, Gab. So
Thanks.
my top tips are don't reinvent the wheel every time. As you'll experience when you're working with these different LLMs, prompt engineering is something that's become an absolute skill with utilizing large language models. And the more that you play around with these tools, the better you'll get at knowing how to ask it to do a task for you the best so that you get the best quality response. And in doing that, you'll find that, particularly if you're asking the same task over and over and over again, that writing out that prompt in that very nuanced way over and over is time consuming. And so one of the best ways to save time is to keep prompts set for you that you can copy and paste back in as kind of your foundation template. And then from there, be able to just alter that existing prompt template instead of having to completely rewrite the prompt every single time. So highly recommend to not reinvent the wheel of your prompt every single time. And I'll actually go into more detail in a couple slides on one of my favorite kind of tips of how to do that even to a greater degree. As Gab was saying, there's a lot of approaches to using AI that I think a lot of newspapers, I know a lot of congressional offices fear regarding just over reliance on the tool. And so avoid that. And, I think inherently to a degree what seems appropriate use and what doesn't. You want to use LLMs to assist and augment your work, but it's not there to replace your critical thinking, your expertise, or your political judgment. You want to trust your gut. You also need to understand the fact that you're in the position that you're in because of your expertise and all of your ability to understand the context around what you're writing about. And that's something that even the best LLM right now doesn't have that. And so don't over rely on it. Once again, have it augment your work, but don't have it replace a core critical function of what you bring to the table in your position. As Gab made the comment, you always want to fact check assertions. LLMs across the board sound very, very confident in what they provide to you. And so always verify facts, citations, references. If it provides you a link or it references a book or a paper, make sure that book or paper exists. I know I always ask it for citations on things. I always double check the citations. And sometimes they're 50-50 correct. Sometimes they're all the time correct. Sometimes they're even more made up than what I would think was possible. And so always
Too
fact
true.
check assertions. It's not consistent. It's not like, half of them are always going to be right and half of them are going to be wrong. It changes every time. And so it's always
It'll
just worth double
invent, I'll
checking.
just put it this way, it'll invent a Substack and it'll
It
be like the
will.
one thing you don't check and like, oh no, that
And it'll
Substack does
just have
not
invented,
exist.
and it'll sound so confident about that, and it'll be a Substack that seems completely on brand and real, and it does not exist. So just
Nope.
truly, it's worth fact checking everything. And then last, a really great tip is actually if you're using it particularly for a congressional beat, provide it with parliamentary context. LLMs are obviously most of them are completely fed by the internet. They have context about the entire world. If you're looking for very specific assistance on something that has to do with parliamentary language or processes, provided that specific background about like the House rules or the Senate rules or specifically the Byrd rule for amendment processes in the Senate. Don't just assume that it knows what rule you're talking about to start. Be very specific about ensuring that it knows what you're hoping to get out of it by really narrowing down its focus. And so once again, like for example, include references to very specific parliamentary terms, procedures, and norms that you are looking for it to help aid you on, whether it be research or summarization or anything else.
Thanks, Aubrey. Some more tips on writing prompts that will get you the results you want. Remember that that when you're writing a prompt, it's different than asking a search engine a question. You're asking the LLM to create copy based on the parameters you provide. So yeah, keep that in mind. It's not a query. Be careful with what you enter. Like I mentioned before, don't include any sensitive information. And typically LLMs are not contemporary, but so they won't have data on very recent events. But I have noticed now, like when I use Claude, it'll say, I'm searching the web for this, and it'll even show you the searches that it's doing.
And I'll add
Um,
really fast, Gab.
yeah.
One of the first things that's really helpful to do when I pull up an LLM is I always actually ask it how deep its knowledge goes. It's like, when was the last
Oh,
time you received your update? Like how up to date is your information? It'll actually tell you that its last update was, May, 20th of 2025, or it was actually back in April. And so ask it, because that's actually really helpful, especially since the congressional beat follows current events so quickly. Or current events so strictly, it's helpful to know what it knows regarding what's been happening on the Hill. Back to you, Gab. Sorry for the
yeah.
interruption.
No, that I didn't know that. That reporters, you really want to talk to Aubrey. She knows this inside and out, and she'll just, help you in all kinds of ways with AI and Congress. So, all right, I will stop being the comms person now. I'll take off that hat and go back to LLMs cannot typically access links. So you can't say like, look at this link and write something based off of it. Just instead, you're going to download what's on that link and then upload it to the LLM. And like we've said many times, verify that the bot's not hallucinating. And that can be challenging sometimes. You just want to go through and ask it, can you please, provide citations for facts that you cite, and that will help you. Not that you necessarily want to always paste those citations in, but at least it will give you something to work from. Looks like I've got some more guidance to share. Provide background, context, guidelines. So tell it about your intended audience. Tell it what kind of writing style to emulate, what kind of tone, what's the time period or current events that it should be referencing. And I love this creative hack. Like, ask it to write in your style. Write an article about recent trends in congressional modernization, the style of my previous articles on this topic, and then upload your articles on the topic. And like, you'll notice a difference. I've done that with like, okay, that's a nice first draft, but here's some pitches that I've written, and I want you to write it based on that, and then tell me what you did differently. And it's like, oh, I had more active voice, it was a little bit more strident. I'm like, oh, that's not the first time I've heard that. Thanks, Claude. So anyway, yeah, that can be super helpful. Part of the rapport that you'll have with the AI is having that back and forth. You're teaching it to be able to be your best intern, right? So don't just accept the first answer. Experiment with asking it to try again. Like, I'm not really sure about that. Can you try again and provide details to back up your claims? Yeah, as a practice, you'll adapt and you'll teach it how to best work with you. So give the LLM feedback on responses so it improves. Tell it, the lead was buried. Like, be that critical editor. Your lead was buried, Claude. Make sure the most important is described first, and then provide the background information. Or, give me 4 alternative options for that third paragraph. Make sure the copy is concise. Or, you didn't get the tone quite right. It should be slightly more formal, yet still accessible. Or, you should rewrite this in a sixth grade reading level. Like I mentioned, a good general rule is just to prompt it to try again. Don't just take the first answer. And then this will give you an idea of how it thinks, and it'll teach you how to refine your prompts.
And I'll actually just like echo what Gab's like really kind of like honing in on here, which is essentially that when you're going back and forth, you don't know obviously what the LLM is going to give back to you. And Gab highlighted earlier how there's kind of these 4 commercially available LLMs that are out there right now that are kind of the most, popular to use. They each have drastically different personalities, which sounds so weird to say, but they're going to give you completely different types of responses just with how they've been trained and what kind of their programming is. And so obviously Gab's, a lot of her examples is Claude, and I use Claude a lot too, because I just find that it's just narration, and it's just like its conversational abilities just seem a little bit more natural to me. Like it most often reflects what I want out of what I want the LM to give back to me. Whereas for me, when I use ChatGPT, I find that's a lot of bullets and a lot more direct, and just is a lot less like copy feeling, and it's a lot more like list oriented, and like
Yeah.
it's not that it's not flowery, it's just very direct. And then like I said, like each of the LLMs is slightly different. And so while you're going back and forth with an LLM and saying like, oh, that tone is off, or the lead is buried, or, as Gab was saying, like, write this in a different reading level. Also try taking the same prompt that you did originally in one LM and put it into another, which we might get into that a little bit later. But like the idea here is that you're also learning what these tools are capable of, and that's actually helping you become a better prompt engineer yourself. And so with that, I'm actually going to jump into what I kind of teased earlier, which is this creation of a prompt guidance document. As you are really figuring out what you're going to go back to LLMs for over and over and over again, it's really helpful for you, and a huge time saver if you actually create a prompt guidance document to kind of lay the foundation of what you want the LLM to know about you when you kind of like first open up the kind of interface. And so I'm going to give you an example of like how we use it at POPVOX, for example. So internally we have a style writing guide. So we at POPVOX know exactly kind of all of the do's and don'ts of our writing style. And a huge shout out to Gab who developed that. And so we have that as kind of this foundation. And then in addition to that, we also have like our tone document. Like we essentially have a kind of a user manual for POPVOX of being like, we're optimistic. We're very forward thinking. We are big cheerleaders of congressional staff. We are former congressional staff. Our audience is congressional staff. And so we kind of have this like tone setting document. And so anytime that I go in to use Claude or ChatGPT or one of the other models, I have both of those documents, the style guide and our tone document. I have them actually saved as PDFs on my desktop. And whenever I go to interact with Claude and have it help me brainstorm or come up with initial outline or rough draft of an idea, I'm thinking of a blog post, I will actually immediately attach both of those PDFs and say, I am a staffer at a think tank. We support Congress. Please reference the attached PDFs, which is our organization style guide, and a tone document that kind of provides context as to how I'm thinking about this problem. And then I'm with this context, I'm thinking about doing a blog on congressional modernization. Here's the 6 points that I want to make in it. Can you please help me do a first couple paragraphs to get me started? And it will actually, you'll see the LM actually read through those documents. That's saving me the time of having to actually put 2 paragraphs freestyle into the prompt box to actually say, I'm a prior congressional staffer. We're optimistic. We support congressional staff. Instead, it's please reference the attached PDFs. And so these prompt guidance documents can have so much value. Like, for example, for congressional staff, it can actually outline, main talking points that their boss always focuses on, a little bit about their district. It can emphasize, top line priorities for the bosses. Like it can help just kind of provide that context of it kind of gets the small talk, get to know me part of the conversation with Claude or with the LM out of the way. And so these can be structured any way that you might want it to be structured. But it's extremely helpful. And so just to give you an idea for how you can structure your prompt document, or even better, you could turn to Claude and say, I want to do a structured prompt document, and I'm a journalist that covers Congress. What should be in it? And it can give you a draft version. But here's a good initial outline of what could be in it. So define your outlet's context. Explain, if you're writing a newsletter or if you're writing a piece that really follows up on your mission. Put that in there, who your audience is, that reading level that Gab mentioned. Put in there your established voice and tone perimeters. Is it very professional? Is it factual? Is it neutral? And provide specific examples of what kind of phrasing that you like. Anything having to do with specific formats or structures are very helpful. I know I have a prompt documents just for memos. I know exactly how I want my memos structured for my own policy work. And I have that memo structure set as a saved PDF that I can attach. So whenever I'm asking Claude or ChatGPT to draft me a memo, I literally say, please create it in the format that I've attached. Just to, once again, save that time of me having to reformat whatever it already creates for me. It'll just do it the right way the first time. And then provide any style standards. This is that style guide. And I want to say, Gab, how long is our style guide?
Oh, it's I don't know. It's pages and pages because
It's
there's lots of
lengthy. Like
examples.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't, and which is what makes it so helpful for the LLM. And so this doesn't have to be like a 1 or 2 page PDF. I want to say like our style guides
Oh,
pushing like
right. It can
15
be long.
pages. It can be
Hmm.
long and it should be. And so but once again, you only create it once, which is awesome. Perfect. Okay. So using your prompt guidance document, as I said, it's all about attaching it. But in addition to doing kind of that initial playing around with your prompt document, you can even save more time by actually not having to attach the PDFs every single time. Instead, you can actually create your own little GPT. And so the idea here is that you're essentially doing like a little spin-off of the commercially available version that kind of knows you extra well and has kind of been like refocused down to the same core documents that you're going to return to over and over and over again. And so this is for ChatGPT Plus, for example. This is how you can do it. So if you have an account, you go on, you click explore GPTs, and then you actually say that you want to create a GPT. So for example, ours for POPVOX would be my POPVOX writing GPT. I was what I would name it. And then in the instructions section, that's where I would post or paste our style guide and our approach or our tone document. And then I save it. And now it'll always be up there. So anytime I'm going to write, I just click on that GPT and then just know that that already is informed of that style guide and that norms document. Okay, Gab, I just threw a lot at him. I'm going to pass it back to you as I take a breath.
I know. Take a breath. Thank you for all that. I would just want to, plus one, Aubrey taught me how to do that. And now I just go to my project for POPVOX Foundation. It has all the information and it just saves you so much time. And also like, I might not remember all the details of like, oh, that's right. I forgot to tell it, we capitalize Congressional, things like that.
Well,
All right.
and
So now
it
we're,
just like
yeah,
I was gonna say, it just helps because when it does give you back something, it's already way closer to being the high quality that you need
right.
it to be. So it saves all your editing on the back end. Like you're like, oh my gosh, like they actually capitalize everything correctly, or it actually like has the right tone versus me going
Well,
back and saying mostly sometimes.
so part of the hallucinating is sometimes it doesn't stick to all the details. So you still have to proofread just like you would for an intern, right?
That's
So the
true.
analogy
Yep,
still
that's true.
applies. But yes, you're totally right. I mean, and yes, you're totally right. It's
And
always a yes
yes.
and. So we'll get more into the weeds now of how LLMs can help you cover Congress. For example, you can analyze legislation. Ask it to quickly summarize lengthy bills and amendments. And a good tip is to upload the bill if it's really, especially if it's really long, several documents, so you get a more accurate analysis. Ask it to compare or track changes in legislative text. We don't have access to the comparative print suite that we showed you earlier. That's just available if you're on the House network. So it's like a track changes. Let's say, how does this amendment affect this bill? And see the magic happen. Ask it to compare different versions to identify those key changes. Like maybe you want to know what's the difference between the House and the Senate version of the big beautiful bill or whatever bill is happening right now in the news cycle. And then you can also extract specific provisions related to your beat. You can ask the LLM, go through this bill and identify for me the provisions that affect ag, or ask it to extract and summarize potential impacts for specific constituencies for your audiences. So based on this legislation, what specific effects might it have on rural communities, or for small businesses, or for healthcare providers? Give it a specific state or region or congressional district. Ask it to identify similar legislation from previous sessions. You can say, you can even have it create you a table. Say, please create me a table comparing the key provisions of these two bills. So at the time I was looking at the SAVE Act from the 119th versus the SAVE Act from the 118th to see did anything change, and then upload the two bills.
And I'll
Yeah.
add too that that a lot of the LLMs actually have the ability to create flowcharts and graphs and bills. And so you can actually ask it to create the visualizations, as Gab was saying, and it'll actually create if they're a little sketchy, like they're not like beautifully digitally designed, graphically designed visualizations, but they give you a baseline for you to see what's going on. And that is incredibly helpful. I know I ask for data visualizations all the time.
Yeah, thanks, Aubrey. That's a very good tip. You can ask it to identify organizations that support and oppose legislation. It will help you find sources. In the case of the SAVE Act, ChatGPT could not find any organizations that supported the bill. So I asked it to identify its main proponents in Congress, so I could at least figure out, what sources on the inside could I talk to. To get potential sources, I said, if you were a congressional reporter covering, let's say, the Texas delegation, which Texas-based or national experts would you interview for nonpartisan analysis of the SAVE Act and Representative Chip Roy's support of it? That sort of thing. And then you can get ideas. Then you can create prompts that focus on your specific beat. So could you identify any healthcare funding provisions in HR 1968 and then obviously upload the bill? You can ask it to flag technical terms and to provide definitions. That could be very helpful for your readers. You could request a timeline of legislative actions and related events. So like Aubrey said, it can create a whole flow chart or table, create a timeline of the bill's journey through Congress, including like committee referrals, hearings, markup sessions, floor actions. And that will help you identify key moments for reporting, understanding some of the procedural context of how the bill evolved. You could even ask it to analyze congressional spending, disbursements data. So this is all the spending that's done by each member in their office using their member representational allowance, or MRA. So experiment with queries. Remember, it's your intern, so its work will need to be checked, but here's some prompts that could get you started. You'll want to upload a CSV file that you can find from disbursements.house.gov. And be smart about what you ask for it to write. Like, what story could really be, this is just me on my soapbox, but what story could really help inform us of how Congress operates, like probing deeper into issues like staffer compensation. That's something you can get from this data. You could say, analyze the disbursements in the spreadsheet that I attached to compare Q1 versus Q2 spending patterns, highlight any significant shifts in priorities for the member. You could say, looking at all the data across all the members' offices, which office spent significantly more or less on staff salaries, or flag any unusual or infrequent expense categories that appear in less than 5% of offices. How does spending differ on constituent services between freshmen and senior members? And one of my favorite ideas is, and please take these ideas if you want them. Based on these 4 quarterly reports, how has spending on technology changed over the past year? And I tend to be polite, and I ask the LM, politely. I say please, and I say thank you. There's some back and forth right now. We're recording this in May of 2025. There's some back and forth right now, whether that's spending lots more energy or not. I still think that you're training it to work with you. So I like to have a polite conversation. Anyway, I'll get off that tangent. Thank you.
I say,
I'm
hey,
here all week.
Manners
Yeah.
matter. We all
Manners,
had to
exactly.
build
Thank you, Aubrey.
Manners matter.
You could have it help you generate data visualizations might be a little bit strong. I probably worded that a little too strongly, but at least creating some charts showing the percentage breakdown of major expenses for the average congressional office, looking at comparing franked mail spending between swing and safe districts. That could be very interesting. And at least it helps you get ideas that you will then just dig in more yourself. You could also have it prepare contextual questions for interviews. So based on this spending data for, let's say, Representative Issa from California, what 3 questions should I ask about their significant increase in technology spending, or what contextual information should I gather to better understand why did this committee spend 40% more on travel than in previous years? And it might not necessarily be nefarious. And it can help you surface potential story angles. Looking at these spending patterns, what are some potential stories that a reporter based in wherever you are, might want to explore, or what spending categories show the most variation between offices. And that can show you potential differences between priorities and approaches across members' offices. So just some ideas using data that's already there because of work that folks in nonprofits like POPVOX Foundation I used to help disclose online. All right, I'll stop. Thanks, Aubrey.
No, it's my turn to throw in a couple examples too. So here's a couple more use cases of how it could be helpful for you in your job and your beat. One of my favorites is using AI to clean up interview transcripts or just transcripts of a hearing in general, or any transcripts. The time saving that we've experienced from this is incredible. Not only will it help like clean them up, but also is amazing at summarizing, pulling out key points. Like it's great at coming up with follow-up questions, anything like that. Like it is truly, this is where it really does mirror the help of a very dedicated intern, of just that grunt work. It's very, LLMs are very helpful with coming up with potential interview questions for lawmakers, staffers, or experts based on a given topic. I don't know about you, but I know that at the end of a long week, or at the end of reaching out to multiple people on a specific topic, I just get tired of trying to come up with new questions and new creative ways of thinking about a problem or a project that maybe we've been talking about for a really long time. And so going to an LLM and asking it to come up with 15 new questions that are engaging, or that could really like drive a conversation to be really helpful and informative and lively. It's very, very helpful with coming up with interview questions. And also just as a brainstorming tool. I mean, it's a really cool opportunity if you are able to attach a person's bio along with a sheet about whatever the conversation is going to be about, having them come up with new things, or having a LM come up with new ideas of how their bio kind of intersects with the topic that you're talking about that maybe you have missed or not thought about. It's really helpful for that. As I mentioned with the transcript point, but having an LLM summarize hearings or briefings that you couldn't attend, I know that's one of my biggest use cases. It's extremely helpful with that, and it's especially helpful with summarizing what comes out of question and answer periods. There's so much time, obviously, as we all know, that's wasted sometimes with back and forth and a lot of procedural elements of a hearing, that sometimes just getting the actual meat out of the question and answer of a witness period is really helpful, and LLMs help out a lot with that. And then prompting it to suggest ways to frame complex policy debates in terms that actually resonate with people. I know that as an organization that really tries to show Americans why it's so important to invest in Congress, that we use it a lot for this, to talk about how do I make my neighbor down the street really care about this issue without it sounding so nitty gritty. And it's really helpful for that. Or as an example, like how would HR 1968 impact small businesses, in Hawaii 2nd District, or how would this like particular topic, resonate with somebody from this part of the country or from this ideological background. That's another huge one that it's helpful for, is like, how can I talk about this with somebody who thinks differently than me, and how can I help these ideas resonate through a different perspective. Going back to transcripts, having it analyze things that are happening actually on the local level. So town hall transcripts, constituent letters, and like huge kind of themes across kind of constituent interactions or social media posts. If you're able to download them, that's huge. And once again, can save so much time and maybe pull out some information or some insight that you were going to miss. And so here's a couple examples of prompts that you can throw in and play around with. All right, Gab, back to you.
Sure, thanks. And realizing that FOIA does not apply to the legislative branch, maybe FOIA is part of your beat, and understanding just how government is working on the federal level more generally, you can have it be your FOIA assistant. And again, you want to experiment, give it feedback, don't just accept its answers as golden, but it can help you save time, especially generating boilerplate copy for those records requests, right? You can say, write me a public records request to the Federal Communications Commission for any correspondence from members of Congress from January 20th, 2025 until present regarding funding for PBS and NPR. And outside FOIA, we know that, I think I'm on the next slide.
There you go, sorry about that.
No worries. Thanks for doing that. Outside FOIA, we know you wear, FOIA and covering Congress and all the things that you do, you wear many hats as a reporter. So let AI help you with your comms outreach work. We know that you need to promote your work. So ask it to help you create social media posts for your stories. Tell it, I just published this story, and paste the headline and maybe the first couple paragraphs, or, just upload the story and create a potential package that includes, give me 3 options for what I would post to X. different lengths. One should be a question, one should have a key stat, one should have a compelling quote, or help me have with like a 2-sentence LinkedIn post highlighting the most valuable insight for professional audiences, because it's LinkedIn, right? Or help me pull 3 pull quotes from this article that would work well social media graphics, or give me a brief, and tell it how much, like 50 words max, newsletter blurb of why this story matters. I mentioned earlier, I use Claude to help me with subject lines. You can do the same with headline variations, or if you do newsletter subject line variations, you can ask it to help you create a social media calendar or publishing schedule. Ask it for hashtag suggestions. I do that for posting to LinkedIn, and then I check because sometimes like I want to see, does anyone actually use this hashtag? But still, it can help get you started.
All right. Well, that was a lot. And
That
I
was a
hope
lot.
it was a lot, but like I also, I think even as Gab's like going through so many of these examples, like there's just even more that are coming up in my head of just ways I've used in the last week that I just think could really save you so much time if you turn to these tools. And so we really do hope that you have found this helpful. Since this video is on demand and not live, we do invite you to be in touch with us. This is a huge passion project of mine as a prior congressional staffer, and I really do think that congressional capacity is something that has struggled so much in the last multiple decades, and we never really have figured out the tool for how to kind of overcome those gaps and address this pacing problem. And AI is kind of like that magic bullet to a degree that could really help with that. It's not going to completely solve the problem by any way, shape, or form, or any stretch of the imagination, but it's just one more tool in our toolbox that I think can get us closer, especially if Congress actually utilizes the tool responsibly and actually really integrates it in workflows. And I think that the same can be true for you and your job and with covering Congress. And so with that, if there are Q&A about anything that we've talked about, please reach out. I'd love to do one-on-one discussions or trainings or anything to help you out. We are constantly innovating at POPVOX. We're always trying new ways of how to use and trying out new tools. And so there's always something new to talk about. And so please reach out, and I'd love to give you an update on where we are at this time. And then with that too, like please share this. If there is someone else that you think that this in your newsroom that this would inspire, or somebody else in your newsroom who would like to ask
Or
this
maybe
questions.
an editor who's like, I don't know about that AI.
Yeah, big reach out. And like we would love to help demystify this technology to the biggest degree possible. And so yeah, I really hope to meet you. Gab, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, if you can, here's different ways that you can get in touch with us. Thanks, Aubrey. And I appreciate your availability for helping reporters. It's what we live to do. So like, it's not like, oh, I don't know if you have the time, like the white paper can wait. We really want to prioritize helping you understand how to use this technology, helping you understand how Congress uses this technology, maybe asking questions, to nudge them in the right direction. Journalism is critical for democracy, and we're here to help you with your job. So here's many different ways of getting in touch. You can also email me directly, gab@popvox.org, Gab, G-A-B, like the gift of gab, you probably noticed in the last hour. And also just head to our website. We're very open source. We put all our information there, so you can find reports that we've written, analyses that, like Aubrey mentioned, our tone is always optimistic and supporting what's good. And we will also call out what, might need some tweaking. So we talked about the AI implementation in the House versus the Senate. There's like some good documents there related to that. AI House rules and just like how the House was so ahead of the curve in January 2024. Where is it now? You can find all of this at popvox.org or get in touch with us. And if you'd like us to do a customized training for your newsroom or just to chit chat, we're totally open for that as well. So with that, I'll let you have the final word, Aubrey. I think you have a good phrase here.
With that, happy prompting.